Hey gang, welcome back. This is going to be part two for the Mustangs and Mermaid illustration. What I want to talk about today is just sort of what I was thinking as I was going through this piece. And there's a cool little trick for a little bit better composition tool that will be coming up pretty shortly. And I want to talk about that guy. But that's going to be it. So let's jump right into it. So we're picking up right where we left off last time. And I'm going to expand upon the first sketch and kind of rough idea of that I had before. And I think this is also a new day too when I'm picking this up, so I've kind of slept on it a little bit. And you can see that I'm just kind of painting on, I'm just doing it on one layer really. There is the layer below it that kind of had the foundation, but I'm painting on top. But I'm realizing that this is not going to work out and that it's going to take a little more work than what I had started or what I initially thought it was going to take to get the values right. So these first few minutes are just me kind of like futzing around with that. Before too long, I'll figure out that this isn't going to work, and then I kind of dial it back. There's a little bit of backtracking, but I'm so happy that I did it, and I just kept myself to following like the structure that I should have. And what I'm doing here is I'm kind of basing this off the Oregon coast, which is where I grew up. And so there's usually all these cool rocks that are along the coastline, and then there's still plants and there's basically little forests on all of these giant rocks. It's kind of neat. One of the neat things of living in sort of it's not a tropical rainforest, just I forget what the word for it is, but it's a rainforest essentially. So there's trees everywhere. So this right here is the technique I want to talk about, or the little tiny tool. So it's similar to the rule of thirds, where it kind of breaks up your composition and then just to the left or the right. Where it differs, though, is it'll be just a little bit further left and a little bit further right. And so how we're going to find that point is we draw a diagonal across the composition. And I've actually picked the wrong diagonal, but it doesn't really matter because once I have it made, I can just flip it however I want. So we want to have our diagonal cross as you saw me make, and then we're going to make a 90-degree angle, or right angle, from that to the other corner like you saw me make. And usually like when I have it on paper, I ballpark it and just kind of guess, and it gets me close enough to what I want. And it's really neat composition, or it's a really neat tool to have in your arsenal because there's something neat about it. It just slides it over just enough more so that like it really kind of sells the composition. It's like butter. I don't know how else to describe it. I didn't think a composition could be like butter, but it's like butter. So that's a neat trick to have in your arsenal. And you saw how I made it, and then from there I just kind of flip it around, and I actually use the other side of it, like the one that I originally made, because I want to try and get this nice diagonal across my composition that I have most of the sort of rock range, because it's not really mountain range, but that range of rocks will kind of fall into that diagonal a little bit. But we have the one on the far left that is out there, but that's just to kind of give us some balance. And that kind of brings me to an important point. Balance, like as I'm thinking about this piece, is I'm always thinking about the balance and like the composition and making sure like one side doesn't feel more weighted than the other. And of course, when I go back in and bring some more finish to this, I'm going to double check my balance again, because now that I'm saying it, I'm thinking like, oh, maybe I could make it stronger, because I don't think I double checked it after I finished the last value study, which is where this video will leave off. But so balance is important, and I don't do it too much in this illustration, but I do flip the canvas, I think at least once or twice, or I have in the past. It's something I'll commonly do. Yeah, actually, I'm just doing it right now. What do you know? That is similar to what the old masters used to do. They would have a mirror, or I think before mirrors, they probably just did shiny metal. Somehow they looked at a reflection of their piece, and it really brings to light all the flaws and mistakes that you've made. So it's kind of, the first time you do it, it'll be kind of like jump at you, like, oh, like why did I flip the canvas? It just points out all the flaws. But you'll soon embrace it because it points out all the flaws and you can fix them. And yeah, so that's a really handy trick. I can't emphasize flipping the canvas enough. And now that I'm a little bit further along in the illustration, I want to talk kind of about the process again. So what you saw me doing initially was I was just painting all in one layer, which that's fun, but it's kind of hard to go back and fix things. And since I knew I wanted to try out a couple different value structures, like I wanted to try an overcast day, and then I just wanted to try like a normal kind of bright day, very high contrast where the sky was going to be almost white, and then the rocks and the beach and everything would be a much darker color or darker in value. But so what I did is I put my value just on one layer, which you see that kind of like mid-tone, and then I started making new layers on top of that for my line work, and like a sandwich in between them, I'll throw in like the three values. And this lends itself better to more quickly trying out different compositions, or with the values anyways, I mean. Well, and it kind of helps with composition and drawing, because as much as I can, I like to work non-destructively, meaning I can go back and fix something, or I can kind of pull an old sketch back if something wasn't, if I went in a direction I didn't like, and instead of hitting undo a million times, I can just kind of go back to an old layer. And you saw me doing that a moment ago when I was trying to figure out how I wanted these rocks to go. And I didn't really want to lose where I was, because I still liked it, but I felt like I could push it further. And for me, that's sort of my little safety net to let me just like push forward and push through and not have to worry about ruining what I already had. And then I just cleaned it up and throw it in an old folder. And sometimes, like, if I'm really happy with where it went, I will go back and delete those if my files are feeling like they're a little bit too big. But now that we're getting into the value, I want to talk about some of the other things I was thinking about and really trying to focus on. When you saw me painted it a little bit, there's this neat thing that kind of happens where there's a lot of, it's not necessarily fog, but there's a lot of like kind of water and wind. Well, because the coast can be really windy, and so that'll blow up a lot of sand. And I imagine some water will get picked up in that too. And so there's just like what I'm getting at is atmospheric perspective. And there's a cool thing where there's just a ton of atmospheric perspective at the bottom of these large rocks. And I think a lot of that has to do with probably the wind and just the water thrashing about. And so, little particles of it getting in the air. I mean, because real quick, just a crash course on kind of how atmospheric perspective works is as you look at something in the distance, you'll notice that it's lighter in value than like it actually should be, or the things around you. And that's because even though, air pretty much looks invisible, unless of course you're in LA, but there actually is particles and there's stuff in there. And so basically, as you're looking at something further away, there's just more stuff. I've heard they just call it, there's more air in the way. And so things just kind of get hazy and foggy. And it's kind of amplified at the beach, especially at the bottom. And on the last composition, I think I kind of nailed what it looks like in, like reference photos and in person. Of course, this value study has the line work. The final's not going to have a line work, so it's going to sell it a little bit better. So anyway, long story short, that was a fun, cool thing to kind of remember, that it's like, oh yeah, that happens at the coast. Like, I don't live on the coast anymore, so it's been a little while since I've seen the beach, so I need to get back there. But okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about, well, that like really quickly just saw was this is my overcast example, or my overcast attempt, and I was trying to do like some God rays to draw attention to the car, because my initial plan in that was to have the car, well, the car is going to be the focal point regardless, but I wanted to have the car kind of be a bright spotlight or spot in the illustration, really draw your eye to it. Because that's a cool thing about in compositions, your focal point generally has the greatest amount of contrast, and that kind of draws your eye. So that's what I was shooting for. And I still get that in the final because I'm just gonna do a white car. It's so funny. Because I do like cars, and I always hated white cars, but the car that I got about a year and a half ago ended up being white, and I don't know, just that car, and I just love white cars now, so I'm going with white one in this one. I don't know why that was important to tell you, but I'm doing it. But real quick before we wrap this up is I want to talk about an area that I want to focus on moving forward from here, and that's really selling the scale of this. I think how I'm going to do that is I might try and do it with these rocks a little bit. It's like the ones in the foreground kind of, well, a good way to show scale is to have something close to the foreground and then have that same object further away. I don't know if with rocks it'll sell that, yes, these are the same sort of size rocks. So maybe I'll do it with like some driftwood or something to really sell it like it's far away and it's kind of, I mean, I guess the car sells it, but I really want to sell that those rocks are like really far away. So I'm going to work on that in the next video, or maybe, well, yeah, it'll be in the next video, but when I bring this piece back up, I want to focus on that. But anywho, that went quick. We're out of time. So if you leave a comment below with any questions you may have, I'll do what I can to help you out. And as always, if you check the description below, there's some links to where you can find my other artwork. Thank you so much for joining me today, and look out for part 3. I should be diving into color in that one. And, well, this is in real time. I haven't painted further than what you've seen here, but like I said, I want to focus on trying to sell the scale, and then I want to get some color in this guy. Thank you again. Bye-bye.